Hi there and welcome back to this week's trade recap. Finally, I have some decent things to show here, so let's get right into Monday's price section. So maybe, as I think everyone will know, we were bullish at the start of the week because we swept all the sell side and we quickly went up, leaving this new week opening up to be filled. So on Monday, we were on this range and I should be bullish, but I was somewhat bearish because the market wasn't showing a lot of strength. We swept this, we were still inside this gap. I know we wanted to fill this, but because this was so big, I didn't think this would get filled so quickly as it did. And zooming right into the 2 minute, as I said, we swept this buy side liquidity. We were delivering from the gap and we had this low inside of our value gap that had a really decent liquidity. And this was a good trade to take, a decent one to take that I didn't because this was the start of the week and my bias wasn't that good and I didn't take this one. It ended up being a break even, yes, but this is a trade that a lot of times it works and I should have entered this trade. Tuesday we went up a lot and we inversed this 4 hour, somewhat bullish to this high, but I still wanted to see price fill this gap to long after it. But zooming in on a 2 minute, I was somewhat bearish because I wanted to take these lows, but I wanted the lows to be targeted for me to then long. But we didn't, and I was still looking for longs, and we made this perfect equal lows. And zooming in on the 1 minute, it inversed this, which was a really good trade. We inversed this one, and then we inversed this one above because we were still targeting this LRLR, this trend line liquidity right here. But it would be a good trade if we went a little past this one. We didn't sweep the liquidity. Yes, it did work. It worked with a lot of momentum. It really looks good, but we didn't sweep this. So it creates conflicting draw on liquidities because we have liquidity above, we have liquidity below, and longing here is a pattern trade. This isn't at all a good trade to take. A lot of times this will fail. Wednesday, we had swept a lot of liquidity above. We still had this major one, but we had a lot of liquidity below and I wanted to see some of this liquidity get taken, and because the market was looking weak, I wanted to see this low get taken. Near open, we took this high and I was somewhat bearish. And remember that we still had these equal lows below to be targeted. We swept external liquidity, we swept internal liquidity, and we inversed with a decent, somewhat decent momentum here. And when we inversed it, I took this short. I wanted it to have a lot of momentum to this downside because here we were inside this 15 minute, and if we didn't have a lot of momentum through this 15 minute, I thought that this trade could fail, but it didn't. We tapped this 15 minute, I went break even when we were inside it, and it did work. This isn't the type of trades that I really like. This took a lot of time to end up going to the target, but it is a good trade to take. If we zoom in on the 30 seconds, we have this continuation one. We went down, we were still targeting these lows, and here we had a lot of momentum. We went right back inside the zone, and because we didn't have a lot of follow through throughout this low, I thought that we were going to head higher, and I didn't take this one. But this is a good one to mention because we created this short-term high, we swept it creating an intermediate term high, and we inversed this 30 second with a really good momentum, and we still had this target, and we are so close to this trendline liquidity that normally this works. Here it would be a break even, but this is a good trade to take. But if we go out to the 1 minute in this exact trade, we see that the 1 minute inversed above. So if we had a lot of confidence in this trade, we could take this continuation play to the equal lows, and this trade was a hard one but a beautiful one. This is a really good trade for us to take. Also, at a time, in my opinion, I thought that we should go higher for us to go lower, but here we already have the intermediate term high, the short term high, and this should just be a continuation for us to go head to these lows. Now, to the one that annoyed me the most, here on Thursday, we were inside this 1 hour and this one. So I didn't have really a clear bias. I wanted this 1 hour to get inversed for me to target higher, and this one for me to target lower. But we see that we had a good displacement through these lows, and then we created this short-term high, an intermediate-term high, and usually after that we do drop, but I didn't notice that at the time, and I was still trying to long, which is okay because my overall bias is still above us. But I was targeting a high which is in a huge time frame. The high is on the 4-hour daily, and I was trying to long on the 1 minute. We notice that we have this relatively equal highs. It did sweep it, but it wasn't a lot, so that probably is some sell stops here. And we swept this here, we swept this one, and I thought that if we had momentum through these fair value gaps, I could take this trade to these highs. But it never happened. And if we zoom on a 30-second, as I said, we took this liquidity below, then we created this manipulation leg, we created another one, we swept the internal range liquidity, and here we have relatively equal highs. I already took a trade exactly like this, but I didn't take this trade because I didn't have the confidence for it. This trade is really good, but I didn't have the confidence because in the past 3 weeks, I haven't taken a single win or a single loss. For me, it was too zoomed in. This 30-second inversion fair value gap was too zoomed in because I was targeting a 1-hour high, and I was trying to see if we would inverse this 1 minute right here, which we never did. And this is a really good trade to take. We took external liquidity, we took internal liquidity, we have relatively equal highs, and this is the 9:30 open wick, which usually has, like a data wick, has a lot of liquidity above it and is a really good target. So this target plus the relatively equal highs, this is a really good one to take. And right after it, on the 1 minute, we noticed that we wanted it to inverse it, but we weren't. We were weak. The market wasn't having strength for us to inverse these fair value gaps. And we stalled around here after taking this liquidity. And here, which is something that I haven't noticed a lot, we have this low inside the fair value gap. Yes, we are still inside this hourly and we haven't inversed it, but there is liquidity there. And if the market doesn't show us the strength that we want for us to long, if it doesn't have the strength for being bullish, it probably has the weakness for being bearish. And we stall here, and with a lot of momentum, after taking this liquidity and having liquidity below, we inverse this 1 minute, which is also a great play, and this is a trade that I would want to take on this day. Also, if I took this, if I knew we took this low, we would probably also take this one, and this would probably be the target for me to take this trade, but it never happened. After all this, on Thursday, we went down, and when we took this hourly low, we inversed also this hourly, and we inversed the 4-hour, which usually tells us that we are gonna head lower, and we inversed it with a lot of momentum, so usually it shouldn't go higher. But if we go here on a 2 minute, we took this liquidity on the left, and with a lot of momentum, I was still bullish because we were leaving some liquidity above, and my bias for the day was bullish, and I got blinded by this one. I was trying to target these highs, which doesn't have a lot of sense, but that was what I was trying to do, and we inversed this with good momentum. So I did end up taking this trade, and usually my break-even is here, but I didn't lose because here we created these equal highs, and on ES we did create an SMT through these two highs. So I went break even there because I saw, which is something that I didn't saw when I entered the trade, that as I said, we inversed this 1 hour and the 4-hour. So this trade shouldn't be taken because the bias there should be for us to head lower because we inversed those fair value gaps and we didn't have strength. We only had weakness. We already had moved with a lot of momentum, and here the move probably would be for us to sweep this high and then maybe take another short because the market is still weak. Thank God I got stopped at break-even at this trade when I understood all that, and the ES created an SMT, so it did give me the opportunity for go break-even, and that's exactly what I did. So now, going into Friday and going into the trade that I did take, because those two trades that I took in the previous days were break-evens, here we were still holding today the 4-hour here on the left. If we zoom on the 5 minute, as I just said, we left these equal highs and the market had a lot of strength. If you go here on the 1 hour, we inversed this hourly to the high with a lot of momentum. Also, we have this untapped 1 hour gap and one tapped BPR, and I was targeting those highs. And here we tapped this hourly, which was what I wanted, and I wanted for us to take some sort of liquidity before longing, some sort of Judas swing right at open. And if we zoom on the 1 minute, we had this high. Around here, we tapped the hourly and we swept this liquidity below. This doesn't have a clear delivery on the lower time frame, but he has a clear delivery on the 1 hour. We left liquidity above, which isn't the best. These weeks aren't the best, but with a lot of momentum, we inversed this 1 minute. Subjectively, this is a really good trade. We have liquidity above, we have a lot of momentum, and we have good targets. This is a pretty decent break even, and this is a pretty decent target. So I took this trade, and usually the target is this equal highs, which would be a huge trade. But I didn't went for this one because the market has been so tired. It hasn't been so efficient. I'm generally scared, and I don't have the confidence that I had in the previous markets, in the previous months. So here I made up a story that we could, because we had already taken this high, we could stall at this consequent encroachment of this 15-minute wick. I went break even when we passed the consequent encroachment of this 1 minute with momentum. If we did take this consequent encroachment of the 1 minute wick with momentum, I didn't want this for head lower again. So I went break even here, and thankfully I didn't got stopped at break even, and it went up higher. And with a lot of momentum, we passed this consequent encroachment. And there was a possibility that the market was not efficient like in the previous days, where we created a lot of relatively equal highs, but we never sweep the clear draw on liquidity that we want. So around here, I saw the good profits that I had, and I took everything out. I should leave a runner to this one because I had a lot of confidence in it. I didn't. Maybe that's something for the next trades. And another thing that I want to mention is, because we took the consequent encroachment with such momentum, we usually don't stall here, and we head higher, just like happened. When we touch the consequent encroachment and we start shopping around this zone, that's when the market is probably going to head lower, and that's where we should take our profits. When it does take this with a lot of momentum, usually it doesn't stall there, and it goes to the target that we want. Thankfully, we are up again, so I really hope the next week goes well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.